Bismillah, we continue with what the Imam says. Because now he goes on to ritual purity itself, an actual purity itself. He says, among the divisions of outward cleanliness are those things indicated in the law, such as removing excessive hair and nails and dirt, purification also from acts which necessitate wudu, and also to remove impurities from you. Among these things are the removal of pubic hair, shaving of the armpits, the clipping of the mustache, the trimming of the fingernails, and then he mentions a little bit about the fingernails. So there's a couple of things that he mentions here, and I have kind of divided the outward cleanliness here on the slide into moral purification and physical cleanliness. Okay? And here we are talking, I've mentioned about the purification is half of faith. I've mentioned, as Imam al-Haddad says, the one who adorns his outward with perseverance on good works and adorns his inward with praiseworthy qualities has perfected cleanliness. Okay, that's moral purity. Now we talk about physical cleanliness. And the first thing the Imam mentions is what we would call good hygiene. All right? And there's a hadith on this. The Prophet ﷺ said in some narrations, khams min al-fitra, in another narration, ashara min al-fitra. 5 things are from the fitra. Right? By fitra here he means good hygiene. Because the things that he talks about are things like clipping the fingernails, trimming the mustache, shaving your pubic hair, which is your hair under your armpits and so forth, those sorts of things, these types of things, okay? He also mentions, Imam al-Haddad also mentions using the miswak and so forth. Now, he's mentioned here, interestingly, he says, it is when you are trimming your fingernails, it is recommended to start with the right index finger. With the right index finger. Then to carry on to the right little finger, then the left little finger, all the way through to the thumb, and then finish off with your right thumb. Okay? In other words, you start, there's your fingernails, right? You start here, and you go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Now that's a sunnah. Now you might think, seriously, there is an order in which to clip fingernails. Seriously? Yes. You're not sinful if you don't clip them in that order, right? It's fine. What is the wisdom behind it? Imam Ghazali mentions this. Imam Ghazali says, you know, when you have guests, right? When you are serving food, how do you start? You start with the guest on your right-hand side. They pass it to the person on their right-hand side, and you go all the way around like this until you come back, and you eat last. You are the last person to drink from the container and whatever it happens to be, right? Okay? And he says the clipping of your fingernails actually reminds you of that sunnah. Because you start, the right thumb is you. Right thumb is you. You start, that's why I did it like this. You start with the first guest, second, they pass it to on the right, 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 and then back to you. So actually, the sunnah of clipping your fingernails reminds you of the sunnah of serving a guest. And the point of the sunnah of serving a guest is because it's not about who's best, who do I like most, anything like that. It is simply the person sitting on your right. Right? Number 1. So you don't treat anyone differently. Number 2, it teaches you that you eat last, or you drink, it's actually drink, but you drink last. From the same vessel, you drink last. Meaning you prefer everyone else to yourself, and then you have. Okay? There's a hadith, one of these kind of funny hadiths about Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira is really, really, really thirsty. Right? And he goes to this, he says, Ya Rasulullah, have you got anything to teach me today? And the Prophet looks at him. The Prophet knows exactly what he wants, right? He wants to, come, we'll sit down. We'll sit down, we'll eat, then I'll teach you something, right? Right? So then he gets his stomach full. That's what he wants, right? But he can't say it. So he says, oh, anything we need to do, or, do you want to teach me anything? And the Prophet says, yeah, come. Let's go and find something to teach, right? They go to, a certain Sahaba's house. And again, Abu Hurairah says, oh, have you got anything to teach us? And he said, no. It starts off, the hadith starts off, he sees Umar. And Umar, he says, oh Umar, you know, if any new learning you want to gain. Umar says, no. He walks on. Then Abu Bakr comes and he says, anything new you've learned, you want to teach me? Abu Bakr says, no, not really. He walks on. Prophet keeps asking the same thing, but the Prophet knows what he wants. The Prophet knows, right? So the Prophet looks at him and says, come with me. Come with me. They go to the house, they go to a particular house. They're all sitting together, right? Someone brings out a vessel. Now Abu Hurairah is thirsty. The Prophet gives the vessel to Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah says, yes! The Prophet says, give it to so-and-so, sitting on my right. Now take it to this person. Now to that person. Now Abu Hurairah, there's only so much, right? Abu Hurairah's thinking everything is going to get finished before I get a chance, man. He goes around everyone. And last, it is the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Hurairah. And here it's very interesting because there's two variants of the hadith. In the first variant of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Hurairah offers it, there's only a little bit left, he offers it to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ smiles at him, he says, Abu Hurairah, you drink. You drink. Right? And then the Prophet ﷺ had the last bit. In the second narration, the Prophet ﷺ drinks first, then he gives it to Abu Hurairah to finish. And so Abu Hurairah has the barakah of the saliva of the Prophet ﷺ. But what is Abu Hurairah being taught here? He is being taught a lesson. Now the children listening, I'm going to tell you the same type of thing, but in a much more serious situation. After the Battle of Uhud, which is a very, very difficult battle, okay, there were many of the Muslims who were wounded, very seriously wounded, okay, and the Sahabiyat came out to tend to them, like the nurse, like Florence Nightingale type thing. The nurses on the battlefield, they came out to tend to them. And one of them comes to one of the Sahaba, right? And he's dying. He's dying and he's extremely thirsty. Why? He's lost a lot of blood. And so he's dehydrated, so he's extremely thirsty. And he says, water, water. They bring him water. As he's about to drink the water, this Sahaba who is on death's door hears one of the other companions crying out for water. And he says, give my brother first. They take it to that Sahaba who is in the same situation. Dying, death's door, water, water. They bring him the water. He hears another companion saying, water, water. He says, give my companion first. They take it to that companion. By the time they reach him, he had died. They go back to the second one. By the time they reach him, he had died. They go back to the first one. By the time they reach him, he had died. All three of them sacrificed their last drop of water before they died because one of the other Sahaba they felt even worse that they are not drinking. Now that compassion, that called ithar, preferring others over yourself, at that point of death, what gave them the strength and the compassion at that moment to do that? In part, it was the lesson Abu Hurairah learned much later on. Of course, Abu Hurairah comes later, but that same lesson, that when you have that vessel, right, when you are sharing food and drink, you prefer others to yourself. You pass it to the right all the way around until you finally have yourself. And that lesson is recalled in how you clip your fingernails. Because you're likely to clip your fingernails once a week. You're probably not likely to be in those sorts of gatherings once a week. It is a reminder, once a week, prefer others to myself. And then the next, and then the next, and then the next, 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 and then me at the end. Simple lessons like how to trim your fingernails add up. They escalate to what? They escalate to you are dying. And your last act is generosity. That is how small things build to gigantic things. All right? There's a little lesson for you. Allah make it easy. And Allah allow us to be generous in small ways, so that when the time comes, we can be generous in huge ways. I'll make it easy. Let's continue. clipping the... You didn't expect me to say that when I started talking about clipping fingernails, right? In our religion, everything is connected. There's a wisdom in every single thing. No matter how trivial it may seem to you, no matter how arbitrary it may seem to you, there is a wisdom in every single thing. God is growing you. He is growing your personality. He is growing your character. He is growing your faith. He is growing your tawakkul when you are clipping your fingernails.